All right, everyone, we start off today talking about Joe Biden and his endorsement of General Milley. I'm not sure how well that's going to go over, especially considering that the legacy media even deigned to ask him a question about this, and it wasn't even Peter Doocy doing it. That's when you know that it's bad for the Biden admin. Now, your administration's already deep underwater. You pissed away what was initially at least a mild mandate by overstretching and entertaining the commie wing of the party. You've wasted a bunch of time. You screwed up in Afghanistan. You've screwed up the economy. Your approval's now 5 points below disapproval, the latter nearing 50. So what do you decide to do? Instead of doing what you have been doing that's at least somewhat successful, which is that when you make an address, whether it's about COVID, Afghanistan, the economy, job growth, whatever, you do a 180 when you're done. You don't answer any questions off the cuff from the press because you're not good at doing that. You let Psaki handle the question and answer bullshit. And you go have your ice cream and take your little itty-bitty nap. That's what Biden should be doing every time he's in public. He should never take questions from the press because they've actually started asking meaningful questions. They didn't do that for the first 7 months of his fucking presidency. Now, belatedly, they're finally saying, hey, maybe things aren't as rosy as we thought they were, and we should actually do our fucking job, do a little bit of journalism. Still not doing it well or often enough, but at least there's an attempt. It's like you get a gold star for trying. Now, before we get into this, because this is nuts, link in the description first and foremost to an archive source. You can read about this particular insanity. Secondly, keep in mind there will be a pinned comment down below if you're watching this video on YouTube, though, with links to 4 other video hosting sites that I use. Regardless of my output per day, 2 videos are exclusively on those sites and they don't get onto YouTube. Now, instead of doing what he should have done, which is do the 180 and not answer questions thing, which he has done roughly 90% of the time throughout his entire presidency that he even comes out and addresses people. There was a while he wasn't even doing that. I guess he's falling into step and he thinks he's doing a good job. But the thing is, he's demented. And he doesn't really know what he's doing. You know, what do you think he does during the presidential briefings he gets every morning? He's eating ice cream. He's not paying attention. He's got dementia. By the time the meeting's over, he's forgotten half of what he absorbed in the first place. The problem is, therefore, when Biden does actually take a question, it's almost always off the cuff, and he knows he's going to get sideswiped because who's going to be most vociferous in asking a question? Somebody that wants to find out whether he ate chocolate or vanilla ice cream last night, or someone who's like, hey, what about that general who may have committed treason? What do you think about that? What's your reaction? Unwisely, Biden decided to actually weigh in, and therefore we have, again, a link in the description there. And he's like, well, I have great faith in General Milley. And then he does his 180. This is like the 3rd or 4th time he's done that, where he's like, well, I'm not supposed to take a question, but against my better judgment, because I'm such a personable guy, I'll take a question. Like he did that with the Hurricane Ida thing. He had the people from FEMA there, and everyone's masked, which was hilarious except for Biden. And he's like, well, I'm not really... He got trapped in because there were people on the side clapping at him, and I think he got a little confused for a moment, and he's like, fuck it, well, I got to do something. He gives an impromptu speech and then takes a question. What was the question? Afghanistan. And he's like, well, I'm not going to answer about that right now, and so it didn't look good optically. Biden is defending Milley. The problem is that there's been, so far, no assertion by the Pentagon that this is false. They have not said that this did not happen. That means that they're going to carefully try to spin this as Orange Man bad and Milley did the right thing because the president was acting unhinged. I don't think that's going to work. The Trump derangement syndrome thing is beginning to wear off with regards to independent voters. We can look at the January 6th events and say there was no insurrection. There was no attempted insurrection. The FBI has found this. All investigations point towards the majority of the people there never even planned to enter the Capitol building. Very few of the people there were even organized. Those that were planning to enter the building, acting alone, would have been stopped easily by the Capitol Police. It's just that there happened to be thousands of other people that are like, hey, we're going to go take a selfie in the rotunda. This is going to be fun. But they weren't insurrectionaries. It was barely even a riot. I realized that there were people that died. Sicknick stroked out. One chick got trampled. The only person who was actually murdered in the straight-up sense was Ashley Babbitt, the one victim of police shooting that never had a riot happen in her name. there was no insurrection, and certainly Trump never even told these people to enter the building. He told them to march to the Capitol and make their voices heard. That involves holding signs and speaking out and yelling slogans and then going home. And he quite clearly told them to go home with peace in their hearts thereafter. Now, I told people it wasn't a good idea to show up at the January 6th protests because I figured something like that would happen, and my hope is that there were no clankers that did. Now, here's the thing. If General Milley looked at that event, and he genuinely, based on what he was reading or seeing, judged that there was an attempted coup, and that therefore Trump, having been foiled in his evil fascistic plans, might actually attempt to use nuclear weapons against China in order to justify staying in office, then either Milley is a Fruit Loop, or the propaganda in this country has gotten so out of hand that it's actually screwing with the minds of the military brass. I don't know which situation is worse. Now, my belief is that Milley knows better, and that he did this in part as part of a deep state sort of thing, because at this point, members of the U.S. government, and certainly like military brass contractors and shit, they work directly with states like China, with their governments, with their industry and so forth, because they're globalists. Milley's not an America firster. Now, I would think that the president, the generals, and so forth, that's all they're supposed to be. Like that's essentially their top function. But instead, when it comes down to it, Milley allegedly sent in a phone call to the people in Beijing saying, don't worry, right now our nuclear deterrent's bullshit. You can do whatever you want for the next couple of weeks because the dude who could actually okay a strike against you, we're not going to let that happen. He could have started World War III. Just so that people are aware of the gravity of this fucking situation, a general told a hostile foreign nuclear power that our own deterrent was fundamentally useless for several weeks. Just so that we're aware of the gravity of what went on here. Milley should immediately be removed from his duties, and instead Biden says he has faith in the dude. That's because they're planning to use the orange man bad card. Well, this was an extenuating circumstance. This time it's okay that a general communicated with a hostile foreign enemy because he had a hunch that Donald was up to something. Let me ask you this. Did Donald Trump ever attempt to press the little red button and nuke the Chinese in order to stay in office? No. Did he ever foment this? Not to my knowledge, not apparently to Milley's knowledge. He just had a bad feeling about things. Having a bad fee about what somebody else may do does not give you the right to intervene in this manner. What happened is that a public authority that was elected by the people, specifically for the position of commander-in-chief, to be in charge of our deterrent, deploying troops, strategery, as W would say, and all these other things, was usurped by someone who did not have the authority to do so. That individual has to go. Milley must be put, if this is remotely true, if something even akin to this happened, Milley is compromised, clearly doesn't have his priorities in mind, is not fundamentally working for U.S. interests, but is working for China, and must be put on trial. Will this happen? No, he won't. He'll be let go of and he'll end up working for Raytheon or Lockheed Martin. That's at the end of the day what will probably happen, but at the very least his brand of wokeness will be out. And this just goes to show all of the things that were being talked about by populists, libertarians, anti-globalists in general for the last few years are true. This is further evidence that yes, there are people in the government, they're intertwined with wokeness, Milley is a big fan with that don't care about the United States. These people are paid by the taxpayers to represent them, either in the elected sense, in the judicial sense, or in this case, in the sense of self-defense and the use of the military. They're paid by us. They're not paid by other states. They're supposed to think about the United States and only the United States, and then as an afterthought, our allies and our other, various convoluted things that we involve ourselves in and in many cases shouldn't. That's what they're paid for. But some of them aren't doing that. Now, if you had suggested that something like this would happen, if you had said several years ago, well, a U.S. general could supersede the President of the United States on merely a hunch and contact a foreign state and tell them that our nuclear deterrent for 2 weeks was not going to be operable, people would call you a conspiracy theorist. Well, the fact that you would suggest that any general, any red-blooded patriot would ever even do that is just horseshit. But these people have cognitive dissonance, and so when you tell them, oh, well, it involved Trump, he thought Trump would go nuts, Oh, yeah, well, that makes sense. Trump is nuts. CNN told me for 4 years. So yeah, fuck the fact that proper protocol was ignored. Fuck the fact that this is literally the definition of treason. You've definitely aided and abetted the Chinese in strategy if you said, hey, by the way, you just confirmed to them U.S. generals are capable of taking away the nuclear football. Doesn't that seem like in the case where the president is clearly demented, like Joe Biden, and everyone in fucking China knows that and is aware, that means, hey, their deterrence lacking? Well, the general can't launch it himself, supposedly. Biden's not going to be allowed to. Let's invade Taiwan. Let's go take them over. What's D.C. going to do about it? Let's go and invade Senkaku Islands from under Japan. I'll just bomb everything that's alive on them and we'll move in. What are they going to do? There's no deterrent. The United States won't help them because their deterrent is lacking. This could open up a huge can of worms diplomatically. It's times like this that having a specifically weak and even insane leader like Joe Biden is extra specially dangerous, by the way. That's about all. Peace out.